Discover how a hidden recipe cooked by a black maid changed a billionaire's life forever. In the heart of a quaint southern town, a gentle hush fell over the evening air, laden with the sweet scent of freshly baked pecan pie. Amidst the cheerful laughter and vibrant songs of the county fair, a bustling crowd encircled a modest booth adorned with rustic charm. This was where Ruth, a resilient black maid, stood proudly selling her famous biscuits. At 62, Ruth had dedicated her life to serving the Whitakers, a family she nurtured with love, but her heart carried a hidden treasure, her grandmother's secret biscuit recipe, passed down through generations. It embodied Ruth's struggle for recognition, a symbol of her unwavering spirit amid the shadows of a world that often overlooked those like her. At the same time, billionaire Thomas Green, freshly thrust into his family's restaurant empire, felt like a lost ship at sea. With every bespoke dining experience and polished plate, his life lacked authenticity. Then, one fateful evening, fate drew him to the fair, where the aroma of fresh biscuits called to him like a siren's song. Thomas, weary of corporate greed that clouded his every thought, approached Ruth's booth, where a touch of magic awaited him. As he took that first bite of her buttery, flaky creation, it was as if time stood still. A warmth enveloped him, reminiscent of a childhood long forgotten. "Oh my goodness!" he exclaimed, eyes widening. This is incredible." Ruth smiled, her heart swelling. She had spent countless hours perfecting her grandmother's recipe, and with each compliment, it felt as if her family's legacy was finally being seen. But beneath the joyous surface lay an undercurrent of skepticism. The town, vibrant with music and tradition, contrasted sharply with the reality Ruth faced as the dining elite turned a blind eye to her culinary genius. Thomas's intentions to showcase Ruth's recipe within his empire were met with resistance from his colleagues, voices echoing through boardrooms, insisting that her simple biscuits were too unsophisticated, lacking the flair of high-end cuisine. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as hope began to blossom, a misunderstanding struck like a thunderstorm. Ruth discovered that Thomas may be using her family's heritage for profit without truly valuing her work. Heartbroken, she wrestled with a decision that clawed at her spirit, to fight for acknowledgement or walk away quietly, an echo of her past experiences. Ruth's determination clashed with the privileges of Thomas's world, and as she prepared her biscuits with tears in her eyes, the weight of their histories pressed down upon them. The town watched, breath held, as the boundaries of misunderstanding and ambition loomed ominously over this unlikely partnership. Would Thomas rise to honor Ruth's unwavering contributions, or would ambition drive a wedge between their fragile thread of connection? The sweet scent of her biscuits lingered in the air as they faced the ultimate crossroads. What awaited them on the path ahead would be a journey laced with heartbreak, community, and perhaps the hope of a new beginning. The morning sunlight poured through Ruth's kitchen window, illuminating the countertops dusted with flour. She stood at her work table, hands kneading the biscuit dough, the rhythmic motion steadying her racing heart. Each press and fold felt like a push against the heavy weight of doubt pressing on her shoulders. Memories of her grandmother filled her mind, the laughter, the stories, and those magical moments tied to the warmth of the family kitchen, but today was different. The news of Thomas's intentions had reached not only her ears but the town's as well, creating ripples that spread with worrisome speed. Had she truly conjured a partnership, or had she merely become a tool for a corporate agenda? As envious whispers floated through the streets, Ruth felt every gaze upon her, scrutinizing her choices. The townsfolk, who had once celebrated her cooking with open hearts, now leaned toward skepticism. Some were fiercely protective of her legacy, while others whispered doubts. Would Thomas Green, a man whose world seemed light years away from hers, truly appreciate what her biscuits represented? Did he see her as a partner, or just another chance to profit from the culinary heritage of a black woman, lost in her thoughts, Ruth rolled the dough into perfect rounds, yet something inside felt off. She couldn't shake the sensation of being lost in a world that seemed set against her. Her simple biscuits held life lessons, family blood, and a century of resilience. Each bite contained the rich history of the South and the strength of generations. And yet, the question lingered: would that history mean something to Thomas beyond a revenue stream? Across town, Thomas sat in his sleek office, the sterile white walls pressing in on him as harshly as the comments from his colleagues. They called his admiration for Ruth's cooking childish. "This isn't a local bakery, Thomas," they said, dismissing him with a wave. "We provide an experience, something upscale. Can biscuits really offer that?" But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ruth's smile, felt the warmth of the buttery treat melting on his tongue. His thoughts danced around how to bridge their worlds, but each time he envisioned Ruth's kitchen, the simplicity, the care, he was met with a wall of doubt. Could he honor her craft without losing himself to the demands of high-class dining? Could he challenge his peers and risk it all? These questions twisted in his mind, gnawing at him. The county fair was just days away, and the stakes were rising. He needed to approach Ruth, to share his thoughts, and most importantly, to ask her what she wanted. But as he looked out over the city, a sense of dread washed over him. He had to tread carefully. Meanwhile, Ruth decided she couldn't live in fear any longer. Pulling out her grandmother's handwritten recipe, she placed it on the counter and whispered a silent prayer. She needed to protect her heritage, but she also felt a flicker of hope. If Thomas truly wanted to honor her, perhaps their paths could intertwine in a way that uplifted them both. Moments later, her doorbell rang, breaking the morning's silence. With a heart pounding like a drum, she opened the door to find Thomas standing there, uncertainty written all over his face. "Ruth," he began, searching for the right words. But before he could continue, she cut in, "If you're here to talk about biscuits, then let us be clear. I'm not just selling recipes." His eyes fell. "I want to understand, Ruth. I want to know, then show me." Her voice was steady, but her heart raced. "Show me you respect where this comes from." "Oh, I will," he promised, a sense of determination flooding his tone. "I won't waste this chance." As they stood there, both aware that this was their moment to redefine their futures, the weight of decision hung thick in the air. Could this be the starting point of something greater? Or merely the beginning of a complicated relationship marked by misunderstandings? With tensions simmering, a decision loomed: what would emerge from this moment of truth? Thomas took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. The faint aroma of biscuits lingered in the air, stirring memories of comfort and familiarity. He could feel the walls of Ruth's kitchen surrounding him, holding stories and dreams waiting to be honored. This wasn't about profit, it was about something deeper. "Ruth," he started again, his voice steadying, "I admire your craft. I want to give it the spotlight it deserves, not just make a quick buck." Ruth studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Then tell me how," she challenged, crossing her arms. The vulnerability in her gaze flickered behind a fierce determination. "I want to create something that reflects your roots, your flavors," he continued. "I sit in meetings all day talking about trends and upscale dining, but what it really comes down to is heart. Your biscuits are a part of that." "Heart doesn't pay the bills," she replied, her voice clipped but softening as she looked at him. "And past generations didn't just survive on dreams." He nodded. "You're right. But dreams can lead to something real. Look, if you agree to join me in this, we can showcase your cuisine at the county fair. Make it an experience that tells your story, invites everyone into your world." Ruth's mind spun. Part of her wanted to leap forward, to embrace the possibility. But the fear of being misunderstood loomed heavily. What if they just want the spectacle? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if they don't respect my work?" "Then it's our job to change that narrative," he replied earnestly. "You teach me. I'll help guide the project to ensure that your voice remains loud and clear." Let us give your legacy a platform. He stepped closer, and for a brief moment, their contrasting worlds collided in that kitchen filled with warmth and unspoken worries. With a hesitant smile, Ruth finally declared, "If we do this, I want my family involved, and the culture represented. It's not just mine, it belongs to the community." "Absolutely," Thomas agreed, a sense of relief washing over him. "We can do this together." As they forged this makeshift partnership in the soft amber light of morning, a sense of hope flickered to life. Ruth felt her grandmother's spirit smile in the depths of her heart, urging her forward. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could elevate her culinary history, honoring every flaky layer of her grandmother's recipes in the process, but the outside world was watching, and not everyone would embrace the new venture. The whispers of skepticism would grow louder, threatening to drown out their efforts. Suddenly, the phone rang, jarring the moment. Ruth answered, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach as she recognized the caller's name. It was one of her fiercest critics from the town, someone who had never been shy about expressing their disdain for any change that might come from outsiders. "What are you doing, Ruth?" The voice was cold and piercing. "You know what matters to this town. Do you really think they'll accept your biscuits from a billionaire's mouth?" As she hung up, anxiety crawled up her spine. Doubts rose again, swirling like flour in the air. "We may face backlash, Thomas. This might not be easy." "Let them come," he replied, unyielding. "If we believe in this idea, then we've already won half the battle." Ruth looked at him, admiration mixed with apprehension. They were about to dive into uncharted territory, their combined ambitions challenging not only their personal limits but also the collective consciousness of their town. With a deep swirl of emotions, she nodded slowly. "Let us move forward, but we'll have to prepare for the storm." As they shook on it, the unspoken weight of their pact settled in, reminding them that this journey would require courage. Raymond, the town baker, watched through the window on the street, his face grim. He had deep concerns about how they were reshaping the culinary landscape. Behind them, light streamed into the kitchen, illuminating potential and fear all at once. Would the community rise to support them, or would they be met with hostility? The next few days would tell. They would need all the strength they could muster to face what was coming. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, casting ribbons of golden light across the kitchen. Ruth stood by the counter, sifting flour. The rhythmic plop of dough into the mixing bowl filled the space, but her mind was turbulent. Nervous energy crackled through her, buzzing around her like a wasp. Thomas arrived, his demeanor bright and hopeful. He broke the tension as he stepped inside. "Ready to conquer the day?" he asked, flashing her a grin. "Conquer? More like survive," she joked lightly, trying to mask her anxiety. "Survival is the first step," he replied, serious now. "We need to strategize how we're going to present your story." She wiped her hands and turned to face him. "I want to share the history, the women behind the recipes, my mother, my grandmother. They poured love into every batch. How do we translate that into a booth at the county fair?" "Let us make it an experience," he suggested, pacing the kitchen, brainstorming ideas. "We could set it up like a journey. Each biscuit represents a story. We can have small signs detailing their origins, the love, the struggle, the joy." Ruth felt something shift inside her. Each biscuit was indeed a marker of history, a cultural touchstone. "You think people would care?" "Not just care, Ruth," he insisted passionately. "They'll want to feel connected. People crave authenticity, especially now. If you speak your truth, they will listen." She pondered his words, feeling the weight of doubt start to lift. What if they could inspire curiosity? What if people wanted not just to taste, but to experience? Initially hesitant, an idea took root. "We could involve the community too." "Absolutely. Bring family recipes, let them share their stories," he added, excitement igniting in his eyes. "The more personal it feels, the better." As they mapped out ideas on her notepad, Ruth's heart began to swell with possibilities. But as the day unfolded, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her cousin, a picture of a flyer circulating around town that warned, "Support local, say no to prepackaged biscuits." The word struck her like a slap, a first glimpse of the resistance they would face. "We've got to counter this," she said, her cheeks burning. "We can't let them try to turn this into something divisive." Thomas took a steadying breath. "Let us host a tasting event. Show them what these biscuits can do. Let them experience the stories firsthand." Ruth thought back to her childhood, surrounding the big family table for Sunday dinners, laughter ringing out as stories were exchanged over plates full of biscuits. She could almost hear the voices of her loved ones encouraging her, wrapping around her like the warmth of a well-worn quilt. With every concept they drafted, Ruth felt a new sense of determination blossom. She could not back down now, not when her family legacy was at stake, but even as she felt her resolve grow, she couldn't shake the fear gnawing at her. What if the community didn't understand? What if the event became a platform for voices against them? They were readying to take a giant leap, but the ground was shaky. "Let us pick a date and make it happen," Thomas urged, sensing her hesitation. "One step at a time. We will show them we're here to celebrate, not divide." With a reassuring nod, Ruth allowed a small smile to break through. But amidst the excitement, a question lingered: could they really change minds? As she folded more dough, she could almost hear the whispers of the past urging her forward. But with the threat of pushback looming closer, would it be enough to rise? Days turned into a whirlwind of planning, hope tangled with nerves. But with the tasting event drawing nearer, her heart raced with anticipation. Would they be ready when the storm came? And would the community be willing to embrace the flavors of change? Ruth awoke the next day with a tight knot in her stomach. The sun filtered through the curtains, touching the kitchen in soft light, but that familiar sense of dread clung to her like a shadow. As she prepared for the day, her mind was ablaze with the unknowns of the upcoming tasting event. After that flyer had circulated, a sense of urgency gripped her and Thomas. They had spent the last week planning every detail, stretching themselves to think outside the box, but doubt clawed at her. Would people truly rally behind this? Or would it just highlight the divides in their community? "Hey, you okay?" Thomas's voice broke through her haze, pulling her back to the present. He stood by the kitchen entrance, holding 2 cups of coffee, concern etched on his face. "Yeah, just thinking," she murmured, forcing a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thinking about the biscuits or the resistance?" He raised an eyebrow, placing the cup in front of her. "Both, I guess," she sighed. "What if we're not enough?" As they set to work, Ruth felt the familiar rhythm of mixing dough start to soothe her nerves. Thomas moved around the kitchen, his presence steadying. "You're going to be great. Your family's legacy is stronger than any flyer." The comfort of his words was a balm, but she still felt the weight of skepticism lingering. They decided to host their tasting event at the community center, a neutral ground where laughter mingled with chatter, and where stories wound through the air like the sweet scent of baking bread. Ruth envisioned families gathering, children running around while adults reminisced. She pictured old recipes written in curly handwriting on wrinkled paper, stories spilling into the air like dough rising in the oven. As they baked, an idea struck Ruth. "What if I share a story with each batch of biscuits? Something personal about my family's history?" "I love that." Thomas's eyes lit up. "Authenticity will pull people in. It'll create a sense of belonging." Ruth's heart raced at the thought. People would connect with the past, perhaps even with her own story. But later that afternoon, as they prepped notebooks for the event, her phone buzzed yet again. She opened a message from her cousin. Another flyer had appeared, this time more aggressive. "Local heritage at risk, support the tradition, not the pretenders." The word sent a fresh wave of panic washing over her. "What's that?" Thomas asked, his voice tense as he peered at her phone. "They're doubling down," Ruth said, her breath hitching. "It's not just a warning now. They're rallying people. We knew it would happen, he said, but she could see the worry in his eyes. We have to respond. And we have to show up even stronger. Ruth felt a surge of adrenaline. I want to let them take this away from my family. We've got to use this event to dispel their fears. This is about connection, not division. She struggled to steady her breathing. Could she really confront those sentiments? As she began to write narratives for each biscuit, recalling her mother's hands kneading dough, she realized this was not just about her family, it was about everyone. Her heart swelled with purpose. She tapped the pen against the paper, contemplating every rich detail she could share, but in the back of her mind, uncertainty lingered. What if her message fell on deaf ears? What if the audience showed up just to jeer at her efforts? With the event merely days away, Ruth searched deep within herself for hope. Her family's recipes had always brought comfort and joy, could they still do so against this wave of challenge? In that moment of contemplation, the room felt charged with unspoken fears, mingling with the aroma of freshly baked dough. I know it's daunting, Thomas said softly, breaking the silence. But the potential for connection is worth the risk, isn't it? She looked up and met his gaze, the uncertainty mingled with a flicker of determination. You're right. What if this is our chance to change hearts? What if they finally hear us? With that spark of determination ignited, she found a steel resolve forming. Inside, Ruth would stand tall, armed with her biscuits and her stories. But would it be enough to woo the crowd? Would they listen? The taste test was just around the corner. Would the community be willing to embrace not just flavors, but also change? Ruth woke early the next morning, nervous energy coursing through her veins. The community center loomed large in her mind, its walls echoing with the laughter and chatter she hoped would fill them soon. She stood at the kitchen counter, measuring flour with precision, a ritual she had embraced since childhood. Every scoop carried with it a piece of her family's history. Thomas entered, his eyes bloodshot but alive with enthusiasm. Coffee's ready, and I made a fresh batch of those cinnamon rolls everyone loves, he called out, a small grin breaking the tension both of them felt. Ruth couldn't help but smile back, even as her heart raced. You're a lifesaver. Those rolls might just charm the crowd more than I will. They're gonna love you and your biscuits, don't doubt it, he said, pouring himself a cup before leaning casually against the counter. As she whisked the eggs into the bowl, she recalled the faces of family friends who had always sought a taste of her mother's recipes. Laughter bubbled in her mind like the dough rising in the warmth of the oven. If only it could be that simple. Memories were comforting, yet they stirred a deeper fear. What if her family's story was met with resistance? What if they didn't see the beauty in her heritage? Remember the time we hosted that barbecue? Thomas prompted, a knowing smile on his lips. I thought the potluck might end in flames with Uncle Joe's ribs, but it turned into one of the best days. Ruth chuckled. And now here we are, with more at stake than just wobbly charcoal meat. Exactly, he said, the weight of their situation pressing down on them both. But you know that even with the uncertainty, people will come together. Food does that. It connects. As they continued to bake, Ruth felt the essence of her ancestors infused in every move she made. She measured out herbs as though she was sprinkling in generations of love and lessons. Each pinch told a story. The warm, buttery aroma suffused the kitchen, wrapping them in familiarity and comfort. Hours later, the final biscuits cooled on the rack as her heart raced with anticipation. We need to write down those stories, she said suddenly, her voice filled with urgency. They can't just be memories, they need context. Thomas nodded, picking up a pen. Then let us do it. What's the first one? Ruth stared at the plate of biscuits, each adorned with a different hint of decoration. This one's called Grandma's Freedom Biscuit. My grandmother used to say they were made for celebrating new beginnings. She told stories of getting creative with nothing in the pantry but flour and water. Our struggles make us resourceful, and that's a lesson worth sharing. The pen scratched against paper as she spoke, each word igniting a sense of resolve in Ruth. She saw it clearly now: this event could be a bridge, a chance to show that their history was rich, colorful, and full of hope. Maybe they could begin healing the rifts, if only a little. Yet, with every word they wrote, a flicker of doubt lingered in Ruth's chest. Would those lessons resonate with a crowd that might come seeking division rather than unity? As evening approached, a feeling settled over her. What if someone stands up to argue? What if they boo us? Then we'll stand together, Thomas said firmly, taking her hand. This isn't just about you and me or biscuits. This is about community, about making sure our stories are heard. And I believe they will be. Together, she repeated, feeling a small swell of strength at those words. They finished writing the stories, binding them to their culinary creations, and with each narrative, Ruth felt a sense of peace wash over her. But as the day drew closer, the lingering question circled in her mind: were they truly ready to face whatever would come their way? Would their courage be enough to inspire the change they so desperately wished to see? A sharp knock at the kitchen door startled them both. Ruth's heart jumped. What could it be now? She exchanged a glance with Thomas, uncertainty flaring at the edges of their resolve. Let's check it out. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. With a shaky breath, Ruth opened the door, her heart pounding in her chest. What awaited them on the other side could change everything. Opening the door slowly, Ruth felt a mix of anticipation and dread. On the threshold stood an older woman, her face lined with years of experience and wisdom. She wore a faded apron, a testament to countless hours spent in kitchens just like Ruth's. But it was her eyes, bright and piercing, that held Ruth's gaze. Can I help you? Ruth asked, her voice wavering slightly. The woman smiled softly, but the expression quickly turned serious. I'm Clara, she introduced herself, taking a step forward, the warmth of her presence almost palpable. I heard about what you're doing at the community center. I thought I might lend a hand. Thomas stepped up beside Ruth, one eyebrow raised in curiosity. How did you hear about our gathering? Oh, word travels fast in a small town like this, Clara replied, her gaze intelligent and probing. Especially when it comes to food and stories. Your family has a legacy worth telling, and I have a story of my own that you might find quite relevant. Ruth exchanged a glance with Thomas, intrigue sparking in the air. What kind of story? She asked, Clara's lips curled into a faint smile. A recipe, passed down through generations, born from resilience and hope. It was created by a woman who worked for a family much like yours. It changed everything for the people involved, and it might just do the same for you. Ruth felt an electric jolt of curiosity coursing through her. A recipe? She repeated, feeling the weight of the moment. What's so special about it? Clara's eyes twinkled with memories. This recipe was created during tough times, when nothing seemed to come easy. But through it, a bond was formed between two families. It became a symbol of togetherness, and a reminder that sometimes, love is served hottest when it's shared. Ruth started to feel the familiar pull of her mission, to bring people together. Could Clara's story be what she needed? What if we included it in our event? Thomas suggested, his excitement palpable. It sounds like it could inspire others, show how food unites us even in our different backgrounds. Yes, Ruth chimed in, her heart swelling with hope. Clara, would you share that story with us now? Clara nodded, and as they moved to the kitchen table, Ruth felt a sense of urgency. This could be the turning point they needed. As Clara settled into the chair, her presence felt steady and comforting. All right, she began, her voice rich with experience. This recipe is called Evelyn's Harmony Cake. My grandmother was a maid for a wealthy family, and during the hardest of times, she created this cake to celebrate small victories. It became more than just dessert, it was a bridge that bridged gaps between worlds. Ruth leaned in closer, enchanted. Every word bore weight. Jamie, their excited neighbor, dashed in just then, breathless from running. Guys! You won't believe what I just heard. People are talking about your event. Some are excited, but there are others who, well, they don't want change. They think it has nothing to do with them. The room went silent, and Ruth's stomach dropped. Doubt crept back in, mingling with Clara's ancient wisdom. Would their efforts be undermined even before they began? Here's the thing, Clara said calmly, her wisdom filling the room like the aroma of fresh-baked biscuits. Fear often rises with the thought of change. But sharing our stories can break those barriers. Through storytelling, we embrace our past and give hope for a unified future. Ruth felt her resolve harden. We're ready to share. We have to be strong, to push through. Clara placed a gentle hand on Ruth's. Remember, dear girl, sometimes the most beautiful things rise from the toughest dough. As they prepared to dive into Clara's story and the recipe, a weight lifted, a spark of determination ignited within Ruth. They were standing at the precipice of something bigger than themselves, but as they moved forward, uncertainty lingered. Would everyone embrace the change they sought, or would the divide only deepen? Would their stories be a balm or a catalyst for conflict? Thank you for sharing your story, Clara, Ruth said earnestly. We'll make sure it matters. Just as they settled back into preparation, a second knock echoed through the kitchen. This time, the urgency and its rhythm made their hearts leap. What new challenge awaited them now? Ruth exchanged a wary glance with Thomas. The knock echoed across the room again, stronger this time. It was as if it carried with it the weight of anticipation, of more than just simple curiosity or invitation. Clara's hand rested on Ruth's shoulder, her presence a steadying force. Do you want me to get it? Thomas asked, his face reflecting a mixture of eagerness and caution. Let us see who it is, Ruth decided, her heart racing with both curiosity and trepidation. She moved to the door, feeling the cool wood against her palm, and opened it slowly. Standing there was a tall man, his face shadowed by the wide brim of a weathered hat. He glanced at Ruth, then at Thomas, his eyes scanning the kitchen before settling on Clara. There was something familiar about him, but the tension in his stance made it hard for Ruth to place him. Can I help you? Ruth asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ruth Ellis? The man asked, his voice deep and gravelly. Yes, Ruth replied. I'm Marcus, he said, removing his hat and revealing a mane of salt and pepper hair. I wasn't sure if I had the right house. Before she could respond, Marcus stepped inside, his demeanor shifting from uncertainty to determination. Clara's gaze sharpened, sensing the urgency. I need to speak with you, Marcus said, his eyes darting toward Clara, then back to Ruth. It's important. Ruth glanced at Clara, whose expression held layers of understanding. What's this about? Clara asked, her voice calm yet firm. Marcus took a deep breath. It's about Evelyn's recipe. Evelyn was my grandmother, he said, visibly gathering his thoughts. I've spent years trying to find a way to honor her memory and the people she helped. I believed it was my family's secret, but it seems that its significance goes far beyond us. Ruth felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Clara's connection to Evelyn suddenly felt more profound. What do you mean? Ruth asked, her voice barely above a whisper. People aren't just going to want to celebrate the recipe, they'll want to remember what it represents, Marcus continued, stepping closer. Evelyn was not only a maid for the Shaws, she was the heart of their home. When times were tough, she prepared her harmony cake, bringing everyone together. Even after she passed, her story was all but forgotten. What are you saying? Ruth pressed on, searching his face. There's been news people trying to rewrite history, to erase her contribution. I can't let that happen. We must share the truth, he said, his intensity sparking a fire within Ruth. What do you want us to do? Thomas asked, the weight of the situation settling into his features. I need your support. Share Evelyn's story, highlight her legacy through the event. It's about more than just food, it's about dignity and unity, Marcus declared, his voice rising with conviction. Ruth's heart raced with the magnitude of what he was proposing. This was bigger than a simple community gathering. This was a fight against erasure, an opportunity to shine a light on the stories that mattered the most. Before she could respond, Jamie burst in once more, his face flushed with excitement and concern. You won't believe the rumors flying around. People are ready to protest the event. They think it's a waste of time. Ruth felt a pit form in her stomach. She turned to Marcus, the flicker of vulnerability apparent in her eyes. Could they really pull this off? Could they turn a tide of opposition into a wave of support? Together, we can make a difference, Clara spoke softly, her voice weaving hope into the chaos around them. But we need to be ready for the hearts we may have to soften. As the group stood together, a real sense of purpose began to build. Ruth felt her resolve fortify, yet the weight of what lay ahead was undeniable. Could they not only share a recipe but also weave a narrative that bridged gaps? Could they truly unite a community with the shared history of love, resilience, and unity? The door to possibility swung open wider, but unseen obstacles loomed ahead. As determination mingled with uncertainty, Ruth wondered what would come next. Would they rise above the conflicts that awaited, or be buried under the pressure of fear? With the stakes higher than ever, she took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. Would they be able to bring everyone together, or would the event become a battleground instead? Ruth stood frozen, her heart thumping in her chest like a drum calling her to action. Around her, the air buzzed with tension while she processed Marcus's words. This was more than just a community event now, it was a call to arms for a legacy she had barely understood until today. Protesting? She murmured, her mind racing. Why would anyone protest something that brings our community together? Jamie fidgeted by the entrance, his features turning serious. People are afraid of change, he said softly, his voice barely cutting through the weighty silence. They think it'll stir old wounds. It's easier to forget than to face history. Ruth glanced around the room at the group forming around her. Marcus stood tall, a beacon of resolve, and Clara's steady presence encouraged her to speak up. Maybe the only way to honor Evelyn is to face those wounds head-on, she said. That's right, Clara interjected, her voice firm but comforting. If we shy away from the past, how can we embrace a better future? Thomas crossed his arms, nodding deep in thought. But we need a plan. If we just announce the event without preparing people for the story and what it represents, it could backfire. Ruth took a deep breath, already envisioning everything they would need to do in order to give Evelyn the recognition she deserved. First, we gather stories. We dig into the history of Evelyn and the Shaws. Maybe we can put together a small exhibition, sharing photos and memories as part of the event. Marcus smiled, a glimmer of hope lighting his eyes. That's a great start. We could even create a video. Interviews with people who knew her it'll humanize her story, show how far-reaching her impact was. But we have to prepare for the naysayers, Jamie added, concern lining his brow. We should organize a meeting, invite them, listen to their fears. Show them that this isn't about dividing anyone, it's about remembering together. As Ruth absorbed his words, determination coursed through her. They were not just planning an event, they were aiming for reconciliation, for a shared narrative. Evelyn was a bridge between those worlds. Let us have an open meeting then, Ruth said, her voice gaining strength. We'll invite anyone who wants to share their thoughts, their doubts, their stories, even. We can use social media, flyers, whatever it takes. It'll be a community discussion, not just a presentation. Clara's eyes sparkled with excitement. Yes. We can create a safe space where everyone can voice their feelings. We're not erasing anyone's history, we're adding to it. Thomas clapped his hands together. I'll draft a plan. We need timeline, locations, and people to reach out to. Let us get to work. Ruth felt a rush of gratitude for her friends. She couldn't erase the fear creeping into their hearts, but together, they were starting to turn it into motivation. She tucked a curl behind her ear and focused on their mission. As they gathered around the kitchen table, plans began to take shape. Questions flew, ideas bounced, and laughter broke through the tension. Each moment painted a picture of hope, a roadmap to something greater than herself. Just as they were putting the finishing touches on their plans, there was another knock at the door. This time, it felt different. The group hushed, glancing at one another with a new wave of anxiety. Who could that be? Ruth asked, her heart pounding again, anticipation gripping her throat. Should I answer? Jamie offered, stepping slightly toward the door. Ruth nodded, holding her breath. Whatever was behind that door could change everything. As Jamie reached for the knob, Ruth wondered, was it more support for their cause, or were they about to encounter the very opposition they'd been preparing for? The answer loomed just a heartbeat away. Jamie opened the door, and there stood a small group of townspeople, faces marked with uncertainty and curiosity. Ruth recognized a few of them. She felt a flutter in her stomach. Was this the moment she had dreaded or hoped for? Hello, Ruth, one of them, Chloe, spoke first. We heard about your plans for the event. We wanted to come talk. The air thickened with tension. Ruth swallowed hard, glancing at Thomas and Clara for support. She could read the uncertainty in their expressions too, but they stood firm, shoulders squared in solidarity. Thank you for coming, Ruth said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. I appreciate you reaching out. What are your thoughts? Chloe stepped forward cautiously. We just want to understand what this celebration really means. We've heard a lot of chatter in town. Some aren't sure how we should feel about an event like this. Ruth nodded, absorbing the collective unease. I understand, and I want to clarify. This isn't just a celebration of my family's recipe, it's about sharing stories and honoring our shared history, the struggles and triumphs that connect us all as a community. It's about Evelyn's story too. Her legacy meant so much to everyone around her. It's time to remember that. What if we don't feel the same way? A different voice from the group piped up, tinged with resentment. What if this feels like you're pushing an agenda? Ruth felt her heart racing. Conflict was just a breath away. I get it. Change is scary, and so is facing the past. But I promise you, my intention is not to erase our local history. Together, we can honor the past and still create space for everyone here, Ruth said, her voice softening. Marcus stepped forward, his presence strong. We need to share our truths so that future generations can understand what's really at stake. I grew up hearing stories about Evelyn, yet I saw those stories fade into obscurity. We can build a bridge if we all contribute. Chloe looked at her peers, some of them nodded, but others remained skeptical. What if it doesn't work? What if it tears us apart? Ruth took a deep breath, feeling the return of familiar conviction. We can explore it together. Let us create an open forum not just for us to share, but for you to voice your fears and concerns. This event isn't about dividing, it's about healing and growing together. Thomas spoke up, his gentle authority clear. Let us explore the stories that make us who we are, side by side. We'll make room for everyone. If we do this, we can build understanding. I truly believe that people crave connection. Gradually, the air began to change. Chloe's expression shifted, perhaps softening. Okay, I guess it might not be a bad idea to hear each other out. But we'll need more than biscuits. We need to feel that you're really open to listening. Absolutely, Ruth affirmed. We enjoy discussing this, and we can certainly incorporate dialogues leading up to the event. Our kitchen doors are open. Let us listen and create space together. The group exchanged glances, and the tension began unwinding. Let us think about it, then, Chloe suggested as they started to retreat from the door. We'll be back to discuss things further. It might be time to embrace change, after all. As the neighbors faded away, Ruth let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. The fear still lingered, but their openness brought warmth. Thomas squeezed her shoulder, that went better than expected. Maybe, she sighed, still nursing her doubts. But we have a long road ahead. Clara smiled, but you've taken the first step. One heart at a time, you'll reach many. Let's fester this hope. In the days that followed, they gathered personal stories from old family recipes and anecdotes, sharing the connection of their histories. Each day brought fresh voices, new faces, and deepening bonds between Ruth and her neighbors. As the event date loomed closer, excitement began to stir throughout the town, the anticipation of celebration mingled with the spirit of healing. It was going to be easy, and they knew they'd face hurdles. But Ruth felt an undeniable shift, one that whispered of unity, understanding, and love simmering like her grandmother's biscuits in the oven. The sun shone bright on the day of the event, families flocked to the community center, drawn by the warmth of scents that wafted through the air. Laughter echoed off the walls, mixing with calls of joy and connection. Ruth felt a thawing within her, joy radiated like the laughter of children. As she served her biscuits, Ruth didn't just see them as simple food, she saw them as vessels of her family's spirit and stories, uniting different lives around a heart song. She realized the most profound thing: this was more than a celebration of flavors, it was the cradle of a collective memory, woven together through ancestors who fought hard for recognition. Food had brought them back to the table, the ultimate symbol of community. In that moment, as she shared Evelyn's harmony cake and her grandmother's biscuit secrets, Ruth saw the flicker of change light in her neighbor's eyes, felt their resonance echo a promise to embrace history together. There, amid laughter and connection, she felt her heart swell. This was a new beginning, hope filled the air, binding everyone in a tapestry richer than any single recipe. They had woven their tales into one shared story, and from that day forward, not only would the biscuits rise, so would the spirit of unity, love, and shared history. Now, it's time for you to be part of this incredible journey. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that can inspire and transform your heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm that supports these meaningful tales, comment with your reactions and feelings about this ending, because every voice matters, and don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation in their lives. Together, let us keep the stories alive.